minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to use ChatGPT from a complete beginner to being able to ask better questions, get better answers, use voice and files, create your own custom GPTs, and also to organize long projects and avoid the most common mistakes that waste time. But before we do, I'll just take a minute to explain ChatGPT's features and what they do and when to use them. So just starting here on the top right, we do see there's a start a group chat that's showing you want to collaborate with your peers on projects. This one is turn on temporary chat. That essentially means when you click this, any chat that you essentially start is not going to be stored in ChatGPT's memory. And right here is where you click whenever you want to start any new chat. And then right here is such chats that's assuming you have a couple of chats already going and you just want to go back to one particular one. Then you have images. Essentially for this one, it helps you create images from text. So you just describe what you want to create around here. And whenever you're done, you just click enter. And if, let's say you have a reference image that you want, and you want it in any of these styles, then you just click the style and it will ask you to choose your photo, and then you click the photo that you want and it will make it in that style. Then you have apps. So apps here essentially allows you to connect to any application. There is a bunch of them already featured in here. You can select by lifestyle or productivity as well. And this allows you to be able to essentially prompt these applications for whatever you're looking for. And then you have deep research. This is handy whenever you're trying to essentially do deeper dives in research for reports. So for example, this one says track food cultures. If you were to click on that one, it would just autocomplete. And then if you click that, it's just going to do the deep dive into that. And then other than that, you have the plus sign here. This one allows you to attach any files that you may want to enter into GPT. And then this is the one that we looked at earlier for the apps connection. And then for sites, typically ChatGPT searches the web, but if you want to search from specific sites, then you would just click here and you'd add the URLs that you want to search from. So for example, NY Times or any other site that you might be interested in. Whenever you're done, you just go on and click add, and it would add it to the sites that you'll be searching from. So you can go ahead and add as many sites as you want. But since we're not going to be doing that, I'll just delete this one here. And then right here, you have the dictate. This is assuming you don't want to type anything. So if I click on this one, it's just going to go ahead and actually start listening to whatever I'm saying. And then whenever I'm done, I can just always click here and it will use that for its search. Comes in handy when you don't want to type. Then you have the codex. That one is great for those who want to dive a bit more into vibe coding or actually writing software or code for projects. Then you have projects here and threads. And right here is where you go when you want to go to essentially your settings. And again, we'll just go through every feature quickly, and then we'll go back to the foundation. So this one here is your general, right? You can always change your appearances and languages and everything, notifications. Then you have personalization, right? This one has a lot of a couple of on and off features. So for example, here it's saying, do you so for the memory, do you want ChatGPT to reference your chat history? That means it's referencing any past conversations you may have had with it. You can always turn this off or on. um, it's great to turn on if you want consistency, but if you want every new prompt to sort of like start from scratch, then it's probably better off if you turn it off. And then this one is also talking about, yeah, referencing saved memories. Best if you turn it off, turn it on if you want consistency. And apps we've already looked at. This is ads control, so essentially just asking you if you want personalized ads or not. And this is again because ChatGPT recently rolled out ads, and then you have your data controls. You can always come here and choose to delete all chats that you've had. This is great if you don't want your data being stored there for long, right? And then there is all these ones that you can always go in and try out. And if you want to export certain data, you can always export it around here. Then you have your security for turning on two-factor multi-factor authentication. And then you also have parental controls. These are great for families if you want to add different folks in your group, maybe your kids and your friends, and want to manage the security settings for them. That comes in handy. And then you have your account where you can add extra details of whatever you want to essentially have um, your GPTs showcase to your community, for example, right? All right, let's come back here, and then we'll do now the deeper dive into the tutorial. So let's just start by focusing on the foundation. So ChatGPT is essentially an AI assistant you can use for free, right? There you have the paid version, and that allows you to use the latest models and has a couple more extra features as well. Um, but essentially, how it works is simple, right? You type a question or give it a task, and then it essentially uses response to natural language and gets you the response that you need, right? Um, what that means is essentially the single most important skill you can learn is how to give clear instructions, right? Um, so ChatGPT is excellent for things like writing drafts, summarizing text, brainstorming ideas, explaining complex topics in simple language, and organizing plans, helping with coding, or creating templates, right? Checklists or outlines. As we can see, it's doing this here, even as I'm prompting it this one, just to kind of give you an idea of how it works. So it's really also very useful for exploring ideas quickly, right? Because you can ask follow-up questions and refine the answer step by step, as we are doing here, right? It's asking us for the trends we want to analyze, and we are pretty much um, interacting with it as it actually does that. Actually, here it's just showing us what it's doing for now. All right, so it's also important to note that ChatGPT is not always the right tool for everything, right? And here's a few things why you must be aware of that as a good practice. While using it or any of the large language models that you may prefer to use, right? So one is do not treat it as a guaranteed source of truth, right? Without checking important facts, because sometimes it does hallucinate. And then two is do not use it as a replacement for professional, legal, medical, or financial advice, right? Because if it offers you false advice, um, you cannot sue them for essentially giving you that advice because you prompted for it. And then three, do not ask it to make high stake decisions without any human reviewing them, right? So let's do a deep dive into the prompts then. So what are prompts, right? A prompt is just a message you send ChatGPT, right? A beginner prompt may be as simple as explain how to make sourdough bread, right? And just to put this in context, I'll just go ahead here and restart this, and we'll be typing a bit of that as we actually do the searches. So I'll just do a new chat around here, right? Um, so we're going to look at different variations and why this matters, how you prompt, right? So I'm just gonna start with a simple one and say explain how to make uh, sourdough bread, and we can pretty much start to make the steps, right? So first thing is saying, all right, so start with the simple starter, and then here's the ingredients and everything. And it's done all of this in just a couple of seconds, right? And we can see even right here that it does already give you a couple of follow-up questions, right? Like, Do you want me to give you a simplified fast law version, or do a couple other things? And it's essentially asking you to essentially prompt it more so it can better give you what you're looking for, right? So if you ask a specific question, you usually get a much better answer, right? So for example, instead of saying something very vague like help me with marketing, right? So let's try that one. Help me with marketing. And let's look at the response that we're going to get for this one. And then we're going to look at an alternative of what you could have essentially prompted instead. So when we look at this one, it's we can see it saying, okay, so get clear on your audience, right? So don't market to everyone. Again, it's already telling you you should probably have given it a bit more context on who you're marketing to, right? So make your message obvious. So as we can see, this is general, right? Because you may be talking about marketing to maybe stores directly. You may be talking about marketing via, social media. You may be talking about marketing for B2B clients, right? So you want to be a bit more specific, and we're going to try that with a different prompt. So instead of just being vague as the previous prompt, we would say, or we would prompt it something like this. So we could say, act like a small business marketing consultant, and give me 10 low cost marketing ideas for local coffee shop. We'll just go ahead and give it a budget as well, with a budget under $500, right? And we'll just go ahead and run this one. Now, as you do not hear, we've given it enough context to run off of, right? So it does understand that we're what the business is, what our budget is, and it's better able to then actually suggest better ideas for that, right? So as we can see, it's saying, all right, so um, the bounce back ads, right? The cost is going to be around 50 to 100, and then it's talking about Instagram as an option, right? And then weekly micro events, right? And then here we see option 4 is loyalty punch cards, suggesting we partner with nearby businesses because that's going to be very free. And then we could have daily shots as well, and also separate menu options, prompting us to essentially do a push for Google reviews for clients, right? So that there is word of mouth recommendations, student hour discounts, assuming that's in university town, and then sidewalk signs, right? So all of these ideas are now really targeted to our specific use case, as opposed to the previous one where we had no idea where to start from, right? So for this one, we'd have to then kind of like try to go detail by detail, ideating around that, and it would take longer, and it would probably even deviate from what we are essentially looking for. So prompting, just be really strategic about how you use that. So there is usually a 4-part prompt formula that can essentially help you whenever you're writing better prompts. And the structure is typically you want to assign a role, right? So I'll just type it in here real quick. You want to assign a role, and then a task, context, and also the format, right? And we'll go ahead to kind of like give examples of what these are like. So a typical role would be something like act like an expert, right? So act like an expert, YouTube script writer, right? And then we could go ahead and give it a task like the audience is total beginners who feel overwhelmed, right? And we'll then go on to the context. Actually, that was the context we just wrote here, right? So this is the first one is the role, the second one is the context, but we haven't specified the task. So the task would be write an intro for beginner, video about web design, right? And then would finalize with the format. How do we want essentially for ChatGPT to create it for us, right? So we could say something like make it conversational, clear, and how long would want it to be. So we could say maybe about, let's keep it short for now. Let's say about 50 words, right? Or even 100 words, right? Now, if you read the whole of this prompt we're writing here, this is essentially how you would pretty much instruct someone else on your team to create um, a project, right? You would essentially, of course, assuming you would go to someone who's actually a writer, right, or has an idea about web design, and you tell them, hey, I want a beginner video about web design, and for this audience, and for this um, I want it to be this long, right? They would have to have an idea about what it is that you intend to create. So take that same assumption and apply it to whenever you prompt LLMs, right? Because they have no idea about what you want, right? So if you type something vague, they'll create something up and hope it helps you, right? So if you want to achieve exactly what you're looking for, do be very specific. If we run this one here, we can see that it goes on and does actually create a short script for us. So here it's saying, hey there, if you want to build your own website but felt completely overwhelmed, you're in the right place. And it goes on to sort of tackle what is going to be covering complicated terms like HTML, CSS, and responsive layouts, right? So you can see that this response here does cover a whole lot of ground. So let us say if we had kept it vague, for example, if we had just said, write me a YouTube um, script, for example, or whatever other thing. Or okay, let's just keep it that way. So, um, all right. So now, in this case, notice how like the amount of stuff that we're getting, right? Um, Notice how this one was short and to the point, but here we're hearing, okay, so hey there, welcome to the channel and everything. This one is actually doing right because it's borrowing context from what we prompted for earlier. But if we had not yet prompted for this earlier, it would just be putting something vague that's not really related to website design at all, right? Um, Here it's suggesting tools for beginners for us to use and everything else. So great as a follow-up question, not really great as just the first question that you ask. Okay. All right. Let's proceed on then. So we've looked at the format, and we're now just going to explore some of the biggest mistakes that beginners tend to make whenever they are prompting, right? And as we already looked at, one, not giving enough context, not giving a role, not giving a format that you essentially want it to be, right? So let's look at formats. ChatGPT can essentially give you a bullet list. It can give you a table. It can give you a step-by-step guide. It can give you a script. It can give you a checklist, comparisons, versions, right? Short, detailed, or friendly ones. It can be professional. It can be friendly, right? So you have to really prompt for all of these nuances in tones and how you want um, your responses to be given to you, right? So, for example, we're gonna, it's just already suggested all this. We're going to say, turn this into a list, right? Um, and it does exactly that, right? What if we say turn this into a table? We do get a table version of it, right? So again, be specific as to what you exactly want it to do for you, right? Because that's how you're going to actually be able to get something that you can then go on to reuse into whatever project that you're actually working on and edit accordingly or present to whoever you're going to present it to. We could go ahead and add something like make this um, Or we could, since this is too long, we could say condense it to only 2 rows, for example, right? And there it is. It's going to convert the whole table to just 2 rows, right? Or we could say expand this into a detailed beginner guide. And again, it's going to do just that. So be very specific, give as many instructions, um, but also keeping them um, precise, just like you would tell a typical human whenever you are communicating that to them, right? So communication at the end of the day is the most important thing. If you do not specify the format, ChatGPT is always going to choose for you, and it might not necessarily be the right format that you want, right? So this kind of helps you keep control of that. The other thing is learning how to iterate, right? The first answer that you get is it, it's not necessarily always going to be the first answer, right? Look at how we got this answer here, right? But for someone else, they might have wanted it as a table, right? And that's what would have suited them. So they would have to go on to prompt this many times to actually get that in a table, or they would have already mentioned that within their first prompt that they want it to be a table, right? So iteration in a way helps you to get different variations and then go on to choose the one that works for you, right? And for iteration, we've looked at things like telling it to, make it shorter, right? Or make it more detailed. If it's using complex language, we could go ahead and say use simple language, right? Or things like explain it to me like I'm a fifth grader, right? So this helps it to sort of use simpler language, make it easier to read for everybody, even people that may be starting out and don't know all these fancy words, right? If it's repeating certain things, then just go ahead and say, just remove the repetition, right? It's going to be able to do that, or make it sound more persuasive, right? If you want people to actually be engaged with the content that you're creating, or the presentation that you're presenting to whoever is present to listen to it, right? Um, so it's not really just a matter of asking one question, but rather constantly shaping the result through conversations, right? You take note of what it is brought forth, you see what is wrong with it, and then you tell it what to adjust. Right. So in regards to practical use cases, right? If you're a student, then you can essentially use it to explain difficult concepts, right? So if assuming you're learning about a new topic that you have no idea about, this will be a great way to start doing that, right? So for example, even to someone who doesn't know quantum physics, for example, you could just go on and be like, explain quantum physics to me, right? And it's going to go on and actually try to break it down for you, right? And maybe you could also be like, hey, you know what? Um, create a quantum physics curriculum for me, right? And it would then go on and sort of like break it down, tell you what to focus on, and then you could sort of like look at things that confuse you the most, right? So for example, you may not know what quantum positioning is. So you might just go on and say, explain this to me, right? And it again would go on and do the search and sort of like explain it to you. Here you can see it's using famous analogies such as the Schrodinger's cat, right? So this makes it easier for you to be able to grasp new concepts, have study guides, and also outline your essays as you carry along. If you're a creator, you definitely can use it for video ideas, right? Testing out titles, scripts, um, playing around with thumbnail ideas, descriptions, and also repurposing some of the old content that you might have already created in the past. And for business owners, it's definitely great for drafting emails, right? Creating customer replies. So for example, if you don't want to respond to every single email that comes to your email, you can figure out ways to sort of like automate or just prompt right away for the responses to the clients. But of course, making sure that you review most of them because you don't want to be sending stuff that you wouldn't endorse personally. And for developers, as we've already seen, Codex does allow um, for you to work on code projects, so it's definitely great. And it's great for generating your starter code, maybe just simply laying out sections of your code and working incrementally on those ones, or debugging errors if you have if you're using VS Code or any other applications and you run into errors, you can always tell it to explain that to you, right? So the trick is essentially to just give ChatGPT a clear idea of what you're trying to achieve and give it a clear outcome, right? So that way it's able to complete most of the tasks that you assign to it, right? So be descriptive as much as you possibly can be. Um, and then we've already looked at the voice dictation, right? So essentially for this one, it's like we can see here, it's asking us to allow for it to use the mic. If we do that, then essentially I'm just going to block it because I'm not going to use that. But if we allow it to do that, then whatever we say, like I'm speaking right now, it will be listening to all of it. This is great for bouncing ideas back and forth, right? Because you might be working on something, but you personally haven't decided on it, right? So you could just talk it out and be like, hey, I just want to create this amazing website, and I do want it to have this and that, and I'm going to trying to reach this many clients, but I don't know if it would work, right? So how about you do some deep research and explore different ideas that I could start with, right? And it's going to listen to all of that um, and use it for the context for the response that it's going to provide to you, right? So this is great when you're not really feeling like typing or you're driving, right? And maybe just walking, but just want a quick response, right? Um, all right, let's look then at the other future, right? We talked about the ability to add documents, right? Why is this great, right? We've talked a lot about hallucinations, and this is essentially when um, LLM models don't have enough data or context to sort of like give you the response that you're asking for, right? Because it's not going to tell you, hey, I cannot answer this question. It's going to end up making up random facts, or actually giving you data that may not be correct, right? So whenever this feature is there to sort of like um, help you ground your answers in the real facts, right? So when you upload a document, for example, right, that document may already have the essay you're talking about, right? Or you may already have some key definitions you're looking at, right? And then you can go on to prompt it to using that document and any other information that it has access to for example, then go on and create a table for you, right? Having that information alongside other information that may not be in there, right? So that comes in handy when it comes to that. So a great feature to use, try to use it as much as you can. And then we have the other one here, which is projects, right? So you may ask, why is this one for? This one is great when you're trying to keep your context consistent, right? So for example, here, when we look at this, it says investing, right? Or it says travel, right? We can just go ahead and click any of them. So when you create this project, essentially, um, and you start talking about finances, so for example, um, what great stocks are out there for investing, for example, it's essentially going to do this. It's going to start creating these charts, um, right, under these projects that you've created. And you can essentially go on to create multiple charts under this project right here. Right now, you might be asking me, why would I want to do that? One, notice that we already given it a whole context around investing, so which means that it's going to be more grounded, right? It's also going to be able to search whatever we might have previously prompted for within that project and be able to give us better results, right? As opposed to just creating new chats and searching for random things, unless you have that enabled already for it to sort of like be able to search your history. All right, so great one to definitely use. Also, when you're trying to keep your files or your searches a bit more organized so you can easily get back to them, then definitely would encourage you to do that. So, all right. Another feature that's great to understand is the GPTs. I'm not going to do a deep dive into that one, but essentially, what they are is essentially they allow you to create a customized version of ChatGPT built for a specific purpose, right? So, for example, there we saw investing. Now, as opposed to every single time going in and prompting the same thing over and over and on different days, right? You could just already give it those instructions so that whenever you come in, it already knows which stocks you're interested in or maybe what market you're interested in because you've already given it that context. And it's just going to give answers to you based off of that as opposed to using different sources, right? So you could essentially say it's almost close to kind of like putting quadrails around where you want your information to be searched from, right? Which resources to use and everything else, right? So really, really great, especially when you're doing research. Let's talk a little bit about memory, right? We've been referencing memory a whole lot. So ChatGPT can use memory features in some experiences to remember helpful details across chats, right? So it's keeping track of these chats unless you have it disabled, right? And it sort of uses that to be able to then better predict the kind of answers that you may need later on whenever you ask for something new. And some of the things that it sort of like keeps track of are things like your writing style, right? Your preferred tone, the projects that you're constantly working on, and also your preferences in formatting, right? If you're always requesting for your information to be given to you in tables, then it's going to try to do its best to respond or give you back the output in tables as much as it can, right? So always be sure to check your settings, review what you're sharing, and if you want your memory to essentially be tracked, then sure, go ahead and actually give it access to that, right? And that will be, um, yeah, in your personalization, right? And other things, right? Okay, we've looked a bit at that. That's, yeah, you have your genre there as well. All right, let's look at something else then. We'll maybe explore a little bit about the mistakes that are generally made. I know we touched this a little bit earlier. So one is being too vague. You definitely don't want to do that. So instead of saying, help me write better, just always go an extra step. Be like, rewrite this email to sound warm, concise, right? And maybe also share who you might be potentially writing to, right? Maybe it's going to the CFO, right? So then it gets the context in regards to the tone that it should use, right? Don't give, definitely don't try not to put your personal information in the chat, right? Things like emails, things like contacts, things like your passwords, right? Because what's happening is that this may be essentially used for training data, and you don't want other people on the web to actually have access to that or for some of those results to come whenever they search for things, right? So try as much as you can not to do that. There's ways around this, of course, making sure that you disable ChatGPT from using your information for like training purposes and saving your memory and all others. But even with those in place, just try not to share your personal information. The other mistake is trusting every output automatically, right? It like it's a chatbot, right? It's an LLM, so essentially, in as much as it's scraping information, it can always make mistakes. So um, the it remains your role to be able to kind of like look at the information, make sense of it, and if something seems off, do your best to do another search online and just try to verify some things, right? So if most of it seems correct, then chances that the rest of it may be correct as well, right? So um, try to kind of like weigh the risks, right? If you don't care so much about the accuracy, then it's okay. But if accuracy is important, try to verify the facts that you may have gotten, right? Um, so again, definitely hone your prompting skills. Try to create workflows that you tend to repeat a lot of times. That way, it's you already know what to ask for to get a certain response, right? And definitely use different different iteration styles, right? For example, if you prompt for anything, right? So let us say we go back to our chat here that was going on, right? We'd got in here and we could ask for things like, compare options in the table prior, right? Um, and it would, this would allow you to kind of like go in and compare whatever we'd asked for it previously, right? Or if you don't understand why it showed you why it did, you could just be like, explain to me the reasoning. And it would go on to explain to you how it came um, uh, uh, towards that, or maybe just explain some of the definitions you'd asked for a bit more in details, right? So just really ask it as much as you'd ask a person if you do not understand anything, right? It helps it get more context and refine that a bit more to you. And finally, but most importantly, right, it's really important, again, to understand that this is just here to assist you, right? So be flexible. At the end of the day, you still decide what gets generated, right? What your goal is, right? ChatGPT is never going to know what your goal is as much as it's always going to throw around ideas, right? So um, decide what matters and prompt for that, and you should be able to yeah, master it a lot more as you get to play around with it more. So hope this helped, and be sure to check out the videos on learning AI and mastering prompting. And if you have any questions, absolutely feel free to share them in the comments below, and I'll be sure to get back to you. All right, thanks. I'll see you in the next one.